week, we started to write our first Cypress test. But the only thing we did in the test is open up the web page that we will be testing. Today, we'll continue to work on the test, which is going to test the add contact functionality. Let's dive in. So where we left off last week was we had created a test, but so far all the test does is just goes to the contact list website. So what do we need to do next when we go to the contact list website? Let's take a look at the website. Here we are, and we can see that the very first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to log in. So what we need to be able to do is to tell Cypress to find this email field and type in the email address that we want to log in with. So how are we going to find that field? Well, the best thing to do to figure out how to access a web element is to look at the HTML. So what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on this and we're going to choose Inspect. And when we choose Inspect, it's going to show us that element in the HTML. And we can see that this input has an ID called email. Locating a web element by ID is the easiest way to find an element when you are writing UI automation. So that's what we're going to use. So we will go back to our test and we'll have a new line. And now we will say cy.get, and then in parentheses and in quote marks, we're going to do a hashtag for that stands for ID, and then the word email, because that's the ID of that element. And then we're going to do another dot, and then we're going to say type, because that's the next command. Now we're going to put in what we want Cypress to type in that field. Now you may recall a couple of weeks ago, I asked you to create a login for the website. You should put in the email that you are using for that login. I'm going to put in the email that I'm using. Please do not use mine. Okay, so now I'm going to save. And let's just try our test and see if we can get Cypress to type that email into the email field with this command that we just created. It's often a good idea when you are making new tests to add in little bits at a time and see each time if the test is running the way you expect it to. So do you remember what the command is to run our tests? We say npm run test. And that's going to open up Cypress for us. And then we choose E2E testing. And then we can choose Chrome, or you can choose any other browser you want, but I'm going to choose Chrome. And then you could say start E2E testing. And then it recognizes our two spec files. And we're going to click on the add contact spec file. And now it will run our test. And look at that. It went to the website. It found the email field and it put in the email address that I wanted to put in. So we are off to a great start. Let's go back to our web page and let's now inspect the password field. And we can see the ID for the password field is password. That's fairly straightforward. Let's also, while we're here, inspect the ID for the submit button. Looks like the ID for that is submit. So these are some pretty straightforward IDs here. So let's go back to our code and we'll write two more lines of code. First, we'll say cy.get, and then in quote marks and with the hash sign, we're going to put in password because that's the ID of the password field. And then we'll put in a dot, and then we'll put in type. And then you put in your password. This is my password. And as a reminder, do not use my username and password. Use your own. And then in the next line, we'll put in cy.get, And now we're going to get the submit button. And we learned that the ID for that was submit. And we're not going to type anything in the submit button because it's not an input field. What do we do with a button? We click it. So we're going to do dot, click, and then parentheses. And now let's save. And you will actually see that the test will run all by itself without being prompted. Every time you make a change to a test and you save, the test will rerun. And we can see that the test ran and it logged us in. And now we are actually on the contact list web page. So we're off to a great start. The next thing we'll do is we will click the Add a New Contact button, because this is going to be an Add Contact test, and we need to get to the Add Contact page. So now I'm going to show you a second way to find the identifiers for web elements, and that is you can do that directly in Cypress. Here's how you do it. You click on this little symbol right here, and then click on the element that you want. And right in here, it will tell you exactly how to get that element. So then all you have to do is click on the clipboard, and then you go back to your code, and then you paste. And so now we've identified the Add Contact button. What are we going to do with the button? We're going to click it. So we'll say click, and that should be all set. Let's save. And look at that. The test ran again, and it went to the Add Contact page, just like we were expecting. Let's use this identification tool to find some of the other elements that we'll need on the page. So we've already clicked it. So now let's click here. We can see the ID here is going to be first name with a lowercase f and a capital N. And then we've got last name, lowercase l, capital N. Date of birth is going to be identified as birth date. Email is going to be email. And phone is going to be phone. Let's stop there, and we'll go back to our code, and we'll start writing some more commands to start filling out this form. So we'll say cy.get first name type test. And then we'll do cy.get last name. Oops, don't forget the hash sign. Last name dot type user. cy.get birth date type. And then if we go over and we look at the birth date, we can see it needs to be in year dash month dash day format. So let's make sure to put it in that way. So we'll say 200102. Then we'll say cy.get. Next is email type. And let's say foo@bar.com. And finally, let's do get and phone. Oops, type. And then the phone number should have no dashes or spaces in it, like that. So let's see if we can fill out all of those fields now. Let's save. And let's go back to the project. And look at that, it filled in all those fields that we were expecting. Okay, let's do one more thing, and that is we will click on the submit button, and we should see that the contact gets submitted. So let's go back to our identifier here. And looks like it's identified by the identifier submit. That's pretty easy. Let's copy. We'll go back to our code. We'll paste that in, and then we need to add click, because that's what we're going to do with it. It's not enough just to find the element. You also need to click on it. And let's save. Let's go back to our test. And look at that, we can see that it added our new user right here. Now, your homework for next time is to figure out how to add the other fields. So we added all of these top fields here. You should figure out how to identify these remaining fields and enter values into them before you click the Submit button. And then next week, we will learn how to add in assertions. Thanks for watching this video. If you found my training helpful, please like this video and share it with others. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single lesson. If you're enjoying Monday Morning Automation and you'd like to learn even faster, be sure to check out my book, The Complete Software Tester, which is available in Kindle and paperback on Amazon.com.